afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Vermont is among the country's leaders in protecting the rights of gays and lesbians. Nearly 25 years ago, Vermont was one of the first states to enact hate crimes legislation that included sexual orientation. A decade later, we became the first state to recognize civil unions, and more recently, Vermont became the first state to pass a state law recognizing gay marriage. These advancements have not been easy, but they've been supported by the RU12 Community Center in Burlington. RU12 educates and advocates for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Vermonters, also known as LGBT. RU12 is now launching a new awareness training program. The program is designed to support elder LGBT Vermonters, many of whom experience the effects of discrimination. To find out more, I'm joined by two guests from RU12. Kim Fountain is the organization's executive director, and Jean Senkowitz serves as RU12's Safe Space Coordinator. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Kim, let's start out by talking about RU12 and the work that you do.
Sure. Our mission is to celebrate, educate, and advocate with and for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning Vermonters. And so within that, we have 6 main program areas. We have our health and wellness program, our transgender community wellness program. We have our safe space program, which you'll hear more about when Jean chats with you. And then we have our disabilities program, our elders program, and our family program.
A lot of different programs.
Lots of programs, and we have a great center space with 3,000 books in our library. People can come in from the community and run their meetings. We have everything from support groups to social meetings to activist meetings. So it's a really busy space in Burlington, even though we're a statewide organization.
And coffee and tea in our lounge space.
And so, Jean, your work centers on safe space. Tell our viewers what that means.
So Safe Space is a program, it's an anti-discrimination, anti-violence program for LGBTQ Vermonters. And so part of what I do is I provide direct services to survivors of violence. And so it's I like to say it's akin to the work that Women Helping Battered Women and HopeWorks and other Vermont Network programs, or Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, do around the state. What I think makes us different is 2 things. One is that we have the LGBTQ expertise, and so we really work hard to try and support LGBTQ survivors. The other piece is that we're mission-driven to support survivors of discrimination and hate violence, which is not something that's covered by these other programs.
And so tell me what the impetus was for creating a safe space program that's specifically toward the elderly population.
Well, there is a historic basis for discrimination that LGBT elders have experienced. And so we know that, because Vermont has such a high population of elders, first of all. Second of all, it is a place that LGBT folks move to in their later years because of the quality of life that we have. The LGBT elders are part of our state. They're an integral, vital, vibrant part of our community. And just because of the historical oppression that they've experienced, and I know we'll talk more about that, but because of that, there's a need, I think, to educate the provider network, because the provider network, by and large, are folks that have also grown up in this same era, not identifying as LGBT. And when you are part of sort of the mainstream population, these are things that you don't think about.
Right. Can you give me an example of something that would be covered?
Sure. So let's say an LGBT couple has one partner that needs to go into long-term care. And one of the things that certainly is of prime import is it going to be comfortable for this person to move into long-term care and for their partner to come visit and for them to express themselves as a couple? They've been out in their home. It's for many LGBTQ folks, the home is the sanctuary, and the community that is built includes other LGBT folks. And so, you take that safety of the home away. How is the experience going to be for folks moving into that setting? Are people going to say things? Are people going to say that that's disgusting? Are service providers going to come in and say, you can still be forgiven, let's pray, those sorts of things.
Right, and then there's also that notion, and it's a very Vermont and wonderful notion that, a lot of providers serve everyone equally. And that's a great notion, but when you actually put it into practice with underserved communities or folks on the margins, it doesn't play out. So what you end up with are providers who may have very kind hearts and who are very wonderful human beings who just don't understand the particular needs of our community and thus create unsafe spaces for our elders.
And so who's considered an LBGT elder?
Anyone who identifies as such, right? So it could be somebody who came out when they were young, very, say, when they were 18 or 15 and lived a lifetime of being LGBT identified, or it could be somebody who came out at 65, 70. A lot of our elders were in heterosexual marriages and didn't come out until well into their 70s. So there's a broad range of folks.
And to me, it's I have found a particular passion in doing this work because many of the folks, particularly those who came out at younger ages, are the ones who really paved the way through pride parades and through pushing back against some of the institutional discrimination that sort of set in motion many of the freedoms and the protections that LGBTQ community members now experience. And the thing that I find to be particularly heartbreaking is that, we've got more space in our culture for people to be out and open and safe, and there are still spaces where it isn't safe. And so you have these people who have been out for their whole life or parts of their life who then have to go back into the closet because it doesn't feel safe. And to me, that is just a really incredible injustice.
Do you think it's generational in some respects? In other words, folks who might be elders in that community are sort of have gotten used to not being able to be as open as maybe they want to be, know that at least back in the day there was a price to pay for that.
Absolutely, and these folks grew up in rural communities and stayed. There's this real retelling of history, I guess, in a lot of ways, where people think that, once you identify as being LGBT, that you leave a rural state, and we don't find that. They stay, and there's communities built up around folks, and there may be a lot of that. I'm not going to share my full life. I'm not going to share everything about who I am. Or it could be, I'm not going to say anything bad about whatever's happening in my life because I don't want one more reason for you to think that I'm not okay. And so as our elders learn to hide those parts of themselves, they also learn to hide other things in their life, whether it be elder abuse or whether it be, difficulties they're having just in their daily lives and in the function of their daily world. They just may be terrified to share any of that, or very reserved, or keep
or brought up to believe that you don't talk about those things.
Absolutely.
Or because of the culture in our society around the society being homophobic and transphobic in a lot of ways, there's an internalization of that, like as if I've brought it on in some way, and another reason not to talk about it.
Why is this an issue specific to Vermont, and how does it impact the average Vermonter?
I think, when you're coming from outside the community, it's very easy to look at some of the protections that LGBTQ folks have garnered through the years, whether it's anti-discrimination legislation around employment based in its for sexual orientation and gender identity, which is unusual compared to the rest of the country. And so you can very easily look, and especially with the advent of gay marriage, civil unions and gay marriage, you can especially look and say, well, there's not very much work to be done. And I think when you're inside the community and you understand the implications of this, there is very much still work to be done. And so, because LGBT folks are really only 10% of the population, and that's sort of a large estimate, that leaves a lot of folks who really could use some education around some of the special needs that LGBT elders experience. And so, especially because with the retirement of the baby boomers and sort of the way we need to increase the level of services that we have, that's a lot of folks who don't identify as LGBT in our service provision networks who really need to be brought up to speed.
Can you give me some examples of some of the things that you're talking about that people who aren't in the community wouldn't even think of to talk about, or to help these folks out with?
Sure, absolutely. And Jean talks a lot about this during her trainings with people. You get a lot of folks who, have that real nervousness about entering care, or real, like she mentioned, like my home's my sanctuary. You might have pictures out of you at a gay pride parade, or you might have, pictures of you and your partner. And then a real fear or anxiety when folks come into your home because you don't know who they are,
right?
And you don't know what they're going to be expecting, and so you're always hyper vigilant. And then when you have folks who are hyper vigilant and then dealing with the trauma of, whether it be of needing care, you get some folks who might be a little guarded or a little closed off, and then the provider reads that as resistant, or
which a lot of elder folks are, just normally in that situation. Then to put another layer on top of that,
the anxiety is just runs so high, and I don't think that people appreciate how much of an impact anxiety can have in somebody's life.
Absolutely. May I add something to that too?
Absolutely,
because I think it also plays out in, you know, as you age, the potential for health issues certainly arises, and maybe referrals to specialists or needing to go places other than maybe your GP who you've seen for years. And so what that potentially brings about is, if, you know, the community, the word of mouth is very strong. And so if you have a particular provider that has LGBTQ bias, and, you know, even though their professional ethics that would dictate that that provider sets those aside, it doesn't always happen. And when you are LGBT, you can read that, you can feel it, even if they're not being overtly discriminatory. They may be holding themselves back from engaging with you fully. And so what that amounts to sometimes is for people who need care, who then decide to put it off and not get that, and, you know, potentially until it's too late.
And another thing that we deal with too, that has to do with aging, but we might not think of it this way, are LGBT families who have a parent that needs to go into care, and we may bring our, you know, we may engage that system and then worry that whatever we're doing with our partner might affect our parents' care. You know, and that's terrifying to us, because we think, do we not act like a family? And when we need to be the family the most, right? Or when we need to show our parents that we love them so deeply, where that fear comes in that maybe will affect whatever happens once we leave that space. And we're not saying that we don't want to paint elder care services in Vermont as being these horrible places.
Right.
They're fantastic a lot of times, but there just may be that lack of understanding, or maybe that one or two employees, but that's all.
Or other,
you know,
or other residents that
right,
are there, and
right.
it can be that it's, you know, one or two small things that add up and have an incredible impact on folks.
Is that one of the things that you address when you're training people?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and I think that's something that providers really come to the table wanting to hear. They want to know, so what do we do in moments like that? How do we respond, you know, and wanting to be conscientious of creating a space that is safe for the client that they're working with or on behalf of, and also not wanting to potentially offend other people. And what I talk about is you know, the beauty, and part of the training that I do is making recommendations to the organizations that I'm working with around how can you be more LGBT inclusive. And so that means looking at the walls, and you know, what are the pictures on the walls, looking at outreach materials, internet presence, staff engagement. And so I'm really getting to know these organizations over time. And so one of the things I talk about is, you know, do you have a statement of non-discrimination that's posted someplace and visible to everybody? And therefore, having something that sort of takes it off a particular staff member as being the bad guy and putting it back on, we have a policy in place for everybody, that we create a safe space for everybody, and utilizing those moments as teaching moments, both for other staff to be able to step in and sort of take responsibility for helping shape that safety, and also for other residents to recognize that, you know, here's some accountability.
It sounds like it's a really good way to start a conversation.
That's
Absolutely.
the intent.
Yep.
It is never our intent to go into an organization or a program or a division or anything with wagging fingers. It really is all about collaboration, and really trying to take a look at what are the strengths, how are you working with LGBT elders, how are you working with your elders in general, and how does that translate into doing really good work with LGBT elders, and what might you consider doing differently that could create a safer space for LGBT elders to feel comfortable to disclosing their gender identity or their sexual orientation in a way that's going to allow the service provider to help them to the best of their ability. Because if you don't know, then there could be resources that you're not bringing to the table, or ways that you're not considering how to make this person feel more comfortable and more safe.
And that's why most of our trainings are ideally long-term engagements, you know, because we don't think that you change this within one training. You know, we want to create an agency shift so that there's a way to reach back out to them, and they can reach out to us, so that we learn about what they do and they learn about what we do, so that it's not just unidirectional. And
if anyone watching wants to get involved, there are opportunities for volunteer work?
Absolutely. We are a very small agency, and it's a rural state, and so we're looking for people to get involved, to be part of. We have an advisory group for every region that we're in training, so people can contact us about how to get involved with the advisory group for consultation, and also to be volunteer trainers, so to be utilizing their own skills and working with me to provide for support and some education around what does the training look like, but ways that they can be effective in their own community. community.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us today. It's a great conversation to get started.
Yes,
thank you very much.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.